Hello and welcome back to Tales from the Pit. This is your content warning, although for this episode it's pretty mild. Bridgett Greenberg and I discuss panic attacks from which we both suffer, but unless your panic attacks are triggered by people describing panic attacks, you should be fine. Panic attacks, while truly horrifying to experience, are not that rough to hear about, so hopefully you can all give this one a listen. Before we get started, I'm unveiling another short story, this one called The Show Must Go On, which was inspired by, panic attack. That's the theme, dummy. So I hope you enjoy the story, and if not, you can skip right to the interview at about 25 minutes in. The show must go on. In the darkness of the amphitheater, the every thought was abuzz. They had expected the separation to be traumatic, of course, but they had not expected this. They watched as Unit Cygnus X1 threw himself against the steel walls of his ship. Peering out from his eyes, feeling from within his body, they observed with concern as he moaned and screeched himself hoarse, flopped about on the floor, scrambled back and forth across the cramped chamber as if desperately searching. After an hour of complete hysteria, he simply collapsed onto the floor and began clawing at himself. He left bright, raw scratches across his bare face, chest, and legs. When there was too much flesh jammed beneath his fingernails to continue, he shivered, crumpled, and began to sob. Needless to say, they were upset. Unit Cygnus X1 had been their most capable component. He had been trained even from before birth for the moment of his inevitable separation from the Everythought. Their soothing words had pulsed and radiated through the amniotic fluid in which he had grown, permeating his mind and filling every atom of his being with the foreknowledge of this inexorable event. It had been his destiny, and they had whispered it into his ears when those were nothing more than bundles of cells, scarcely functional. How well they remembered it. And yet here he was now, pale, naked, crumpled in the corner of the perfect ship they had built him. The splintered thoughts battling for primacy in his mind were not at all what they had expected. The Everythought were of one mind, because they could be no other way, and that mind had predicted a trepidation, a hesitancy perhaps, but ultimately and finally a resolute adherence to one's duty, loyalty to man, to earth, to the Everythought. Instead, they felt in him only a dull, wriggling fear. A ripple of worry spread across the mass of their minds like the surface of a pond. Was he capable? Would he destroy himself before the proper time? Would the show go on? And it was a show, of course, because that was all that was left to them. Being one, knowing all, there was scarcely anything left in the wide universe to hold them in thrall, to provide the mystery and curiosity a race like man required. Only this last discovery, this last uncharted domain, to which they had sent their brightest part. Doubt crackled through the core of the Everythought. Would he provide the entertainment they had created him for? Would the mysteries of the black hole finally lay open to them? They listened intently. Unit Cygnus X1 hurt everywhere. The metal floor was like ice, and his scratches stung. His eyes throbbed in time with his heart, drying tears leaving salt on the lids and blurring his vision. His throat felt like a desert, rutted with the strain of shouting at no one. He was alone. He had been alone for weeks now, in some sense. The ship had left Earth and arced away on a mile-long scimitar of plasma. It had carried him, its sole passenger, as far from Earth as any component of the Everythought had ever been. He had certainly been alone then physically, but of course He had not even known what it was to be alone then. For then, his head had been filled with the singular vision and accord of the every-thought. He had not been he, but rather a part of a tranquil and harmonious whole, a tiny component of a single mind, his entire mental output but one firing neuron in man's greater brain. He had drifted on the glassy surface of a warm ocean, and his brothers and sisters had floated with him, never touching, but all moving together in a perfect, unbroken consciousness. Swells would come and go, the ocean gently canting in patterns too large for any individual to comprehend, but which, he had faithfully believed, interwove to reveal the right and true path, immense emotional patterns that illuminated the way of a mankind united, transcendent over the petty rivalry of individual egos, a mankind at last made one. It had been warm and dark, now it was cold and bright. He lay still in the ship's cabin and felt every new sensation like an unwelcome slime covering his body. His nose was stuffed, his right elbow was sore, everything was his. Where before he had been part of something large and strong, he now felt his weakness acutely, as if he were going to be crushed by a boot at any moment. He tried rolling onto his stomach. The flesh of his belly and groin contracted when it made contact with the freezing cabin floor. Comfort had not been something he cared about before the separation. Now he ached for it. This need made him feel very weak, like an ancient warrior pitted against the black of the infinite universe, armed only with a sharpened stick. No, not even that, he thought. He stood alone in a coliseum of wheeling stars, awaiting the first attack of an unknown assailant, and he stood naked. Unit Cygnus X1 pushed himself off of the ground with his arms and tentatively took to his feet. Some of the panic he had felt earlier was beginning to dissipate. The knot in his stomach had ceased its upward thrusting and instead settled somewhere deeper inside his stomach as an intense dread. He had never thought of life as a battle before, he realized. Then again, he had been a part of something truly strong before, and the truly strong rarely question their own might. He decided to sit down. There was a chair, after all. It was about the only thing that had been provided for him, and he had asked for nothing more. It grew out of the metal floor like a giant crystal, square and sharp at every corner. A little needle in one of the arms gave him his food, and a hole in the seat could be opened to accept his waste. There was nothing else in the room. No windows, no doors, only a dull, brushed steel. He didn't even know how large a ship it was, or where he was, or when he would arrive at his destination. He only knew that the end of the journey meant his death, and that the prospect of his ceasing to exist now frightened him in a way that he couldn't have fathomed before. He sat in the chair, freezing cold, feeling it again, and carefully placed an arm on each armrest. Had he really spent the entirety of the long trip in this position? It had felt so comfortable, so right, to sit in silence and stillness, conversing with his fellow thoughts and allowing the machines to do their work. He couldn't imagine that now, sitting still, motionless for days. In fact, he could hardly stand the cabin at all. He glared at the image of himself that the walls reflected back, a brown smear across their gray surface. He blinked. The room seemed to get smaller around him. He wasn't sure where all the light was coming from, but it was blinding. Suddenly, he remembered that he was not, in fact, alone. No, not alone at all. How could he have forgotten? He was still a part of the every-thought, still connected. But it was a one-way mirror only now, a voyeuristic arrangement rather than any sort of unity. In truth, he was so much more than merely naked. He was stripped bare, pinned open on an autopsy table, organs squirming under inquisitive pokes. When he had been a part of it, a member among billions, equally sharing in the knowledge and experience of mankind, it had been heaven. But now, separate yet still exposed, he felt cheated. Blood rose in his face. He shifted in his seat and felt the metal chair back rub against the 3 dime-sized nubs running up his spine, where shunts had been inserted. He remembered the gene therapy, behavioral training, drug therapy, all to prepare him for the experience of serving as a one-way radio in flesh, a closed-circuit television camera unto himself. 100 billion souls were crammed within his skull, observing every thought and physical sensation he had. It must be crowded in there, he thought, and smiled for the first time in his entire life. Standing room only. Unit Cygnus X1 imagined the Earth slowly revolving within his skull, which was a dark cavern. The planet rotated past 2 bright viewing screens that were his eyes, and then into darkness, the back of his skull, where mankind peered instead at the thoughts that danced across the curve of his head like flickering shadows cast by a fire. Members of the Every Thought jostled this way and that on the tiny globe, making sure they soaked up every last detail of his experience. He was a star. Those who could see the ship relayed the images to the others. Those who could not see kept their arms outstretched and eyes closed, canting on the warm sea, waiting to intercept thoughts and relay them to the group. Everyone listened. They were watching him even now, he thought, observing even the images of them that his imagination was now conjuring up. Unit Cygnus X1 pictured 2 mirrors inside the cavern, facing one another, so that the image of the Earth and the Every Thought was reflected down into infinity on either side, becoming dimmer and cloudier as it moved back into the unreality of a reflection of a reflection of a reflection of a recursive mirror that didn't really exist. He played with his thoughts. He'd never done that before. The ship rocked violently. Unit Cygnus X1 sprawled headfirst out of the chair and crashed against the floor, knocking the wind out of him. While he struggled to catch his breath, the ship shook again, as if he'd run off of an invisible road and was now barreling down a dirt embankment. It didn't let up, but intensified as he rubbed his sore neck and clambered back to the chair in the middle of the room. The constant sounds of vibrating equipment and intermittent squeals of stressed metal reverberated through the cabin as the ship tried to break itself apart. Unit Cygnus X1 knew what it meant. His legs wobbled beneath him as he settled back into his seat, far more than he could blame on the turbulence. His heart was pounding, and his breath came short and shallow, though he couldn't tell if that was from the fall or his new physical sensation. He thought perhaps that he was dying. Could one die from fear? He had never felt an emotion so extreme and discordant. His palms slipped on the armrests as he tried to grip them, and a strange buzzing lightheadedness narrowed his vision. How terrible, he thought. How terrible for them if the player were simply to expire before the show even began. If their radio transmitter died moments before the curtain opened, and they sent nothing but a lifeless corpse through the black hole. Because that's what it was, he knew, gripping the armrests again and again. He was nearly there. That's why they had freed him in the first place. He was now riding in a ship with no controls and only one course, without hope of deviation. The Every Thought had postponed the separation as long as possible, and now he was almost to the black hole. He would get sucked in, spaghettified, to his death, and mankind would watch from inside his brain, watch and applaud and hope to learn something, and at last be secure in their total knowledge of the universe's mysteries. He thought he must die if it kept on like this. The darkness that lay ahead of him and the now alien being that filled his mind worked like a vice, pushing his identity from outside and inside, squeezing him until he thought he must have the life crushed out of him. But he didn't. He didn't die. He just breathed harder and faster and clutched at the seat and felt the 100 billion inside him like a nest of spiders scrabbling around, pushing at the back of his eyelids. Ahead of him, though he could not see it, the black hole yawned and gaped and waited to rip him into a trillion single atoms and stretch him into nothingness and absorb him forever and ever. Unit Cygnus X1 made a noise, a dumb animal noise that rose and mingled with the intensifying roar of the ship. He made the noise again and again, and finally stood when the palms of his hands were raw from rubbing the warm metal of the seat. His elbows still ached, his chest still stung. His throat and lungs were on fire now, and the faster he breathed, the more his head began to tingle. The ship started to lurch. He stumbled around the cabin, wrapping his arms around himself, steadying himself against a wall when he had to. He could almost feel the lewd anticipation of the crowd inside him. They leaned forward obscenely in their seats, Romans awaiting the lion. The lights in the cabin seemed brighter than ever. It would come soon. He would die, he thought. He would die, he would die, he would die, he would die forever, stuck between two mirrors forever. He would watch himself grow dimmer and cloudier and die 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times. The brown smear on the walls followed his every movement, mocking him. It would scream and die as well, the whole ship. The whole of everything, everything he thought, everything he knew. Him alone, a solitary object, alone, solitary, individual, attached to no one and nothing. Unit Cygnus X1 stopped and collapsed against the steel wall. He was flushed and moaning, his arms wrapped around himself. His mind was spinning so quickly, he thought the people riding the tiny earth must be thrown against the inside of his skull and liquefied. The lights in the cabin seemed to intensify further still, but they were no longer blinding. When they started to flash red in futile warning, he almost laughed. A warning, really. Then, suddenly, he did laugh. He chuckled, then giggled. Then, without knowing why, he was guffawing, loudly, hysterically, tears streaming out of his eyes. Unit Cygnus X1 could barely catch his breath, he was laughing so hard. He rolled around on the floor and pounded the ground with his feet and grinned uncontrollably, so wide his jaw ached. He let out a long breath and lay flat on his back, staring up at the naked, spread eagle, now brown, now red smear on the ceiling, and feeling the ship vibrate beneath him. He felt warm. He had never been so much of his body as he was right now, when he was about to be ripped out of it. And that was funny, too. Each sting, each ache was his. Something that used to feel like a curse, but now felt like a point of pride. Each breath he took kept him alive a few seconds longer. The every thought of man was in him like a fungus, and yet they were separate. They were one, and they were not him. He was one, and he was him. One and one, equals. The every thought were enemies. The black hole was an enemy. He was alone in the pit of a cosmic coliseum, stars wheeling around him, and he would have to fight soon, and he would lose, but it would be his loss and his death alone. He would put on a grand show, he thought, and he would not be back for a curtain call, no matter how much they ovated. The ship rocked a final time, then broke apart, and was gone. For a bare second, Unit Cygnus X1 was floating in endless space, grinning at the gallery of gently canting stars all around him. And then the lion pounced. There was pain, and he screamed, but the pain flared for only a microsecond before he was spun into the hole like a spiderweb on the breeze. This last act of the show proved to be truly special. The every thought crowded themselves together to witness the death of their brother. As he approached the black hole, thoughts and feelings lost to mankind for eons ripped through his mind. The every thought followed along in lockstep, inhaling those heady sensations like a drug. They rode each violent crest of fear and trough of despair. They made love as one atop the mountain of experience his absurd sacrifice brought them. They felt the depths of despair, the heights of ecstatic joy. It was erotic in its intimacy, daring and powerful in its simple force. They all agreed it was the show of the century. The Everythought huddled even closer as Unit Cygnus X1 collapsed. It was almost time now, they thought. They felt his fear, wrestled with his sudden laughter. What did it mean? From whence did it come? They would analyze it for eons. They felt the queasy laughter welling in them, felt it as their own. It was a memory they would revisit, they knew. They would live the death of Unit Cygnus X1 1,000 times, marvel at it as their greatest undertaking, and masturbate to the gaudy brutality of it all. Unit Cygnus X1 was the right man for the job, they smirked. We should not have doubted. They foamed at the mouth and danced and groped desperately at one another in their fear and joy and heat and lust. And then, finally, the climax came. And when it came, Unit Cygnus X1 screamed, and they screamed with him. All of them, because they were as one, and they thought as one that the end was coming. They felt it, that the lights would dim and they would applaud politely and shuffle their feet and put on their coats and wander back out to the street and home to the warm and canting sea. But the show did not end. Instead, the Everythought watched and felt as the first particles of Unit Cygnus X1 were stripped from him. Single atoms, tiny snowflakes, shot toward the unknown heart of the black hole. They watched and felt as more and more of him separated in a beautiful train, lined up single file, and slid down towards an unbelievable blackness. They screamed in his fear and writhed in his pain, but it would not end. Like a man being electrocuted, the Everythought clung convulsively to the source of their pain. They were fused to Unit Cygnus X1's tortured body, lashed to his senses with no hope of escape until his death. And that death seemed less and less imminent as they watched him slow. Where he should have fallen into the darkness at speeds beyond reckoning, instead, Unit Cygnus X1 slowed to a stop, floating, mouth tight in an obscene grin, stars reflected in his eyes. The members of the Everythought screamed in the intolerable pain of depressurization, felt their bodies explode from the inside and be ripped away into the intense gravity well over and over. At first, they simply reeled with the pain, unable to understand what had happened. 1,000 years later, it dawned on them, as one, because things could dawn on them no other way, and they knew instantly that it meant the end of mankind. As Unit Cygnus X1 shot faster and faster toward his death, as the Everythought fell after him, chained to him in their writhing pain, the flow of time dilated, slowed, and began to crawl. For him, it was over. For him, death had come in the blink of an eye. But for them, sitting stationary at relativistic speeds on Earth, and yet living his experience, the incredible light speed of his plummeting body meant that the blink of an eye would take millennia. The faster they went, the slower they would move, and the longer their screams would continue to be torn from their 100 billion throats. The Everythought felt, as one, the crushing, undeniable horror of relativity. In the darkened amphitheater of man, Unit Cygnus X1 was not dead. He was dying. And it was a dying that stretched out before them like a ribbon 1,000,000 miles long, a climax that would last eons, a pain that would never end. It was dread and tragedy, Sturm and Drang. It was sardonic justice, and it showed. It showed in his eyes that they would have their whole lives to admire. They all agreed. it was the greatest death scene ever performed on the cosmic stage, and their chorus of endless screams, the ovations of the everythought, would rise from the earth in praise of that performance like the thick smoke of a funeral pyre, forever and ever. And still, Unit Cygnus X1 floated, face fixed in a grin. We passed a ton of dudes with giant fuck-off beards and black suspenders driving a horse and carriage.
That is
to a cornfield.
Who knows where Mennonites are, you know?
Or where they go.
Or how they disperse.
Exactly.
Yeah, when I lived in Philly, they were everywhere. And it was my first experience with Mennonites. And I was just why are you in Philadelphia? Why are you in urban Philly?
I also felt so ignorant because I was like, are Mennonites different than Amish? And then a man who's lived his whole life in Dangriga, Belize, who speaks Spanish, French, Creole, perfect English, and ancient Maya, explained to me the difference between Mennonites and Amish. And I'm like, I should know that already, right?
I don't know the difference.
But they're just so... Belize, especially because the national language is English. It's the only country in South America where that's true.
Interesting.
So all the kids... And there's a crazy culture mix there.
Right.
There's the Garifuna, which are the descendants of African tribes who, when the slave trade started, literally were like, fuck this. And got on ships and left Africa not knowing where they'd end up and landed.
In Belize.
In South America, the coast of South America. They call themselves the Garifuna, and they have their own separate language. They learn English, Spanish, French, Creole, and it's insane.
I did not know the cultural wonder that is Belize.
And then if someone's descended of the Maya, they usually know that language. And there's 3 different Maya languages that are all completely different. You have to learn from scratch.
You went on a anthropological dig in Belize. Yeah. So scoot in.
Yeah, both Jen and I are good students, and we absorb shit. We find it enjoyable, which I think also the locals were. Which is sad to me. They were shocked
that you
we climbed through a cave where you got to see the actual remains that have not been disturbed for thousands of years of people that the Maya cut the spines out of and ate the hearts of. You can see the hole in their chest and shit. And they tell you all about it's not boring school shit.
No, that's amazing.
Right. While you're standing there, they tell you about these are the 9 gods of the underworld, Shabolba, and all the shit that they do.
Yeah.
And you're like, this is awesome. And literally every time our guide was like, really? You think that's awesome? Usually when I come in here, people say, I'm tired. Can we turn back early? Or please stop talking so we can just enjoy ourselves. We're like, what?
That's insane.
That's stupid. Yeah, fuck everyone.
You see a skeleton with a hole cut out of its chest. You want to know that story. What is that story?
And the story is they didn't eat for 2 days. Then they went into this cave, lit fires, did an enema comprised of fermented honey until it's meat or alcohol, ground up magic mushrooms, which we would call today. I don't know what they call it.
Yeah.
And the pineal gland of those frogs that you lick to get high, all ground up into a mash, shoved up your ass after you haven't eaten for 2 days. Then you cut your dick open, bleed into a jar until it's full, burn the blood, inhale the smell while you pass razor wire up and down your tongue over and over. Then you pull out the sacrifice, who's usually a captive of an enemy tribe, and cut their heart out with a spoon by ramming it into their chest over and over till you get to their heart, and then you eat their heart.
That sounds like the first season of True Detective.
And people were like, I'm sorry, this is boring. Can you just stop? I didn't come here to learn.
Well, yeah, those people are weak and just don't want to hear that story.
Exactly.
Wait, so they did that to their captives? They just got them super fucked.
In fact, they did it to themselves.
They did that to them.
The captive was, but...
The captive was the person they...
The captive was dead. They ended up even eating a lot of the captive, yes, but they, from my understanding, from the guide at least, if I'm correct and they're correct, and they showed us artifacts of this, is they had obsidian axes, and they'd kill you. They'd crush your skull with one blow.
Right.
then cut your heart out and eat it. Yeah. So unlike Temple of Doom, it's actually more humane than Temple of Doom shows.
Yes.
Where you like claw their heart out with your hand.
With your hand, yeah. I mean, it was a quick death for them, but a painful process for the people who got to live.
Yeah. Well, they underwent a dust. You know how we had the Dust Bowl like Grapes of Wrath?
Yeah.
It lasted for like, I don't know, 25 years at the most. I think it's less than that.
But so all these like Mayans just had like mangled dicks?
Yeah. Kind of. Well, they'd slice down the road, not across, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
So I imagine they had...
Yeah, my people do the across.
I imagine they had really scarred up dicks.
Yeah.
Possibly still functional, though. They didn't cut them off.
Right. I just... Like all the way down?
Well, so they had a Dust Bowl that lasted centuries.
Right.
And that's when the civilization kind of fell apart. People abandoned a lot of the cities. They lost faith because they had the devout belief that their king was a god.
Yes.
Because they'd descend into this cave and talk to the rain god and be like, the rain's going to come this winter.
Right.
And it always did. And everyone was like, I guess the system works. But for 30 years in a row, they say the rain's going to come and the rain doesn't come.
Right.
And they're like, this is all bullshit. And a bunch of people moved away from the big cities. And then they started taking desperate measures. So that's when you start seeing things like they believed caves were literally the portal into the underworld and you're not allowed there. But they're like, shit is hard times.
We got to throw everything against the wall.
I'm going to send a crack team of Chekemaya warriors into the underworld. And they believe there are like 7 or 9 levels. They're like, you got to get to level 6, take these drugs and cut your dicks and bleed. Because that's going to bring the underworld god of rain back to life. It must be like dying.
Yeah.
And you have to nurture it and bring it back to life so the rain will come.
Jesus fucking Christ.
It's rad.
That's intense. And they're all just like delusional and hungry too.
Yeah. I don't know. I just came from there.
Yeah.
And our guide still believes in that religion. So delusional seems strong to me. But
Right. Delusional because of the hunger, not because of...
Oh, yeah.
What they're...
But I'll also say, in the abstract, true philosophical sense, I think Christianity is delusional, and that's
right.
I
mean,
so it's the same.
I mean, that's...
But it was interesting that there's like about 1,500 people in the country that still literally give burnt offerings, not people, because they know they'd go to jail, but livestock and like their best crops and shit and burn them to these ancient Maya gods, whereas I don't think anyone in Egypt is like worshiping Ra. Anymore.
I mean, I can't say for sure, but
I haven't heard of that.
I feel like we would know.
And I know that no one in Greece and Rome is like,
still
Zeus and Aphrodite aid me through my gallstone operation. Yeah.
It's because when I was in Israel and they were talking about like Judaism before it was rabbinic Judaism that we know now, it's very similar to that. So we were like on top of like these ruins, and they're like, yeah, they would have people do this hike you just did for fun up there to kill them and then throw their bodies into the Dead Sea.
And also, aren't they like, also, if anyone saw you in this area, they'd be like, kill her.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You're not allowed to go here.
Yeah, it's exactly. And it's crazy. And they were talking like when the Western Wall was built, like that kind of Judaism was still very, it was not different than the Mayan. Like there were secret rooms where they would like make sacrifices.
And I know, livestock sacrifices were common.
Yeah.
Judaism there was never a primitive form of Judaism that worshiped like God of rain and God of sun and God of dreams.
No,
it was there? Okay.
Maybe there was. Maybe before
a predecessor.
It would have been before the Exodus, before the 10 Commandments. The people who called them Jews, because that's when we were like, "There's one."
That's number one. There's one, and fuck all the others.
Right. I think before that, Judaism was, like more what you would think of like an ancient
like
Mayan
myth,
kind,
a pantheon of gods.
Right. Yeah. It was, and then after the Exodus, that's when they were like, "There's one now." And let's.
It's interesting that everyone boiled it down to one. I guess because civilization learns more, and you feel like. By the way, welcome to Tales from the Pit. Bridgett Greenberg is
thank
here.
you. Thank you.
We'll get to the worst parts of your life,
right?
But I'm fascinated.
But first, we're talking about the worst parts of
ancient
religions.
And my vacation.
Yeah, and your vacation.
Small Beans is all about asides.
Yeah.
And we're fine with that. So buckle the fuck in.
Yeah.
We'll get there. Yeah. There is a topic that's pre-planned.
Yeah.
But I want to ask, this is funny because in the last podcast, I also asked like, hey, people who believe in religion out there,
right?
Explain to me
why. Yeah.
Yeah. But I feel like as everyone figured out, oh, the sun is this thing and it does this, everything boiled down to, well, there's just a God and it's of stuff we don't know. And there's a ton of stuff we don't know.
Right.
Is there a life after life? Where were we before? Who created the universe? Is there any consciousness or none?
Right.
Is everything connected or not? Why is it this instead of any other kind of universe? Like, what the fuck is going on? So you make God just be like, I guess that's whoever knows all that stuff.
Right. Yeah. It's easier than like one person controlling everything. It's just easier to wrap your head around, or like a bunch of people. That just got hard to keep track of, you know?
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I want to hear from our Hindu friends, because Hinduism seems like the last major religion that's like, no, everything has a soul. Fuck you guys. There's like a million gods. We think it's awesome.
And it is pretty cool.
It's cool. Oh, that's why it's like really, I love studying religions, and Hinduism's awesome. Right. But I'm wondering from devout Hindus, thoughts on like, do you think monotheism, like, those fucking idiots?
Yeah.
Like, that's so stupid.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe we're talking from like a very Western centric point of view, which we must be.
Cop to it. Cop to it.
Right. We're like, the three major Abrahamic religions are all, tied through monotheism. And I think that's kind of the lens we're viewing it through. And there are millions of other religions that
you
don't.
Started asking me Shinto, I would crap out.
I got nothing. I think Confucius was part of that. Maybe I'm wrong. And
I'm going to check you on your racism there and your ignorance.
I took a religions class in high school once.
Me too.
And,
it was fun.
It was cool. But, who knows what happened? I think I absorbed some of it.
Yeah.
And maybe I was racist just now.
No, you're good. I want to fill you with love and validation.
Thank you.
Here we go.
Let's dive in.
I want to... first of all, point out how appropriate it is as the host of our in-network show, Rough Stuff. You haven't talked about anxiety. Other people have spoken to you about anxiety very generously.
I force people to...
You've mostly used sports metaphors to mock them.
I know.
And then apologized.
And then feel really bad about it, which I think if... you think about the broader thing I'm doing there is my anxiety showing itself.
Well, so you're here to talk about your relationship with anxiety and sort of level the playing field.
Yeah. And I do think I think I've dropped hints about about my earliest panic attack experiences.
That's true. And you've mentioned embarrassing things fucking left and right. A pile of them.
But
incredible. You never know if that person is necessarily panicking. Because I think a unique thing about anxiety is you can know people who are in the hardest of circumstances and are like, I don't know, I just never panicked. I guess I'm lucky. And people are like, and this is me, so I'm taking full, like.
And my life is just a moment-to-moment panic.
10 minutes before you got here. Why won't this power cord untangle? I'm pulling on the end. Fuck. Oh, life is shit. Oh, my God.
Right. Yeah. It happens so quickly. Like, all of a sudden, I'm just like, why am I sweating so much? It was 2 seconds and it's fine. And then just sweat. But yeah, I think also it was like, because when I wasn't diagnosed, I don't know why I put air quotes around that for people who saw that. I wasn't.
For the record, Bridgett has used the classic finger air quotes sign.
I didn't have to tell you guys that, but I'm being generous here. I wasn't like diagnosed and got on medication and started seeing people for anxiety until college.
Okay.
But then once that happened and I was looking back, I was like, how did we not catch this? Throughout my entire life, I've been obviously an anxious wreck.
I do think there was a time, and even now we're almost overcompensating, where people are like, all right, the kid is they like sugar and they're running around. Don't put them on drugs before their brain is fully formed. But there was a period where it was the opposite, where we're like, I don't know, my kid's just a jerk. Who cares? Yeah.
The thing is, like, I was 21, 22 at that time. Mm-hmm. It was like enough time has passed where I'm an adult now and we've looked back on my childhood. And it's like, I think I told the story in Rough Stuff, and I'll probably reiterate some of the things I've dropped. But like, I think one of my earliest panic attacks that my parents like still talk and laugh about, and it is funny, was it's objectively funny, was my mom. I was at a Chuck E. Cheese and we were playing around in those like hamster tubes.
Yeah, this is creepy already, so you're justified.
Yeah, I mean, it's already a terrifying environment.
It's a 22-year-old person with no background check and a costume touching kids. That's all I'm saying.
It's and like... Is this story, we were like, you know how they have those like hamster tubes that kids just crawl around in. I freaked out because I thought I was trapped. I wasn't. There's no way to get trapped in those. There's one direction to go.
Right.
I just like all of a sudden in the middle of it freaked out. And my mother, I was like, I had to be 5 at the time. This is one of my earliest memories. And my mother had to crawl and get me through the tubes because I was just full like frozen panicking. And I was like, that's not a... I like to
imagine them unbolting it in a helicopter, lifting that section of tube out.
I guarantee you my mother, before she started crawling through the tubes, were like, can they do that?
Right.
I guarantee she's like, anything to
or
not
can
have
these
a grown
minimum
woman.
wage McDonald's workers,
right.
Is it fair for me to impose upon them?
Yeah.
Can you just go push my daughter through the end of the tube?
Grown woman didn't have to crawl through the tube, but she's a wonderful mother.
Well, she's going to drop into the filthy, filthy ball pit. That's fine.
Yeah. Just please. But no, she's a wonderful parent. So she crawled through the tube and helped me out. But it was like, you should have figured something was wrong. Not to blame her. Or I don't want to blame them.
You're like, were the other kids doing whirlwinds inside the tube and screaming? Yeah.
Did anybody else have just a breakdown in front of a tube? You
just lie on your back and like horse kick the side of the tube as it cracks. Yeah.
It's like that. And there were like so many other times. I think one of my I was very young at that point. So that it's probably a memory. I remember getting stuck and freaking out, but like I don't remember. My mom has told me like the crawl through the tube part.
I always wonder what I remember an imaginary version of because I've been told it so many times.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I'm sure there's something, but I do like specifically remember freaking out.
Right.
And that was the first time I've like
scarred your
real
mind.
Panic has set in for me. And then like I think I was 9 at the time, and I know that for sure. And I have also talked about this on Rough Stuff. But one of my first like major panic attacks that I will never forget was in a Ripley's Believe It or Not museum in St. Augustine, Florida.
These are places that children love that as adults you realize are creepy.
Are terrifying.
So maybe you were just, because they're like...
I think I'm the only smart one.
You're a perceptive child. You're like, these wax simulacrum of humans are creepy as fuck. Yeah.
I remember exactly where I was too, because also it was packed. This
place was, LA? The
no, it was
one?
It was the original one, and this was which the first like museum, which was in Florida.
Okay.
Northern Florida. We were doing like a road trip. I think I was getting dropped off from summer camp in North Carolina, or to summer camp in North Carolina, and we just stopped at halfway through, which is St. Augustine, Florida, which is like near the Panhandle, and they're like, there's this cool museum. And it was packed. Like, it was literally shoulder to shoulder people just, like, sliding through. So that wasn't great.
Yeah.
And then I remember we were at this exhibit, and this man had turned himself into a snake via tattooing and, like, split his tongue.
Was he there physically, or are you talking about
No, it was like an exhibit.
Panel,
it was like an exhibit of him, and there was a video, and I was like, I've seen a bunch of freaky shit leading up to this. I'm crowded shoulder to shoulder with strangers. And then that happened, and it was I need to get out of here right now, and started just like fully like hyperventilating. Couldn't see. Couldn't see. That happens to me during panic. Like my vision gets completely blurred. I have to like find like wall and a place to sit to like till that goes away.
Nice. That's definitely That will make that our next topic.
Yeah.
I want you to finish your hilarious story.
My hilarious story about having
about going blind out of fear.
And I was just like holding up. My mom was like, all right, we're getting out of here. And just like full mom strength. She's coming off like a superhero right now. Just like elbowing people to get her like sweating, crying, panicking blind child through this Ripley's Believe It or Not. And she was just like went to a worker and like, do you have any like escape route? Like just like emergency
like a
exit.
crybaby door.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like my child's clearly a little bitch.
I ruined, my family waited for about 2.5 hours to go to the Indiana Jones ride at Disneyland, which is an awesome ride.
Yeah.
The opening week when it was a big deal, which is why it took 2.5 hours. And the line with like the fake like darts blowing at you and skulls and snakes. I took the crybaby door and made my whole family miss it, so they'll never let me live that down. Yeah.
See, my mom did it, and I will never forgive my brother and my dad, who, like, we found the door, they gave us the exit door, and we're just waiting in the gift shop for them to, you know, have their good time and walk through this museum. And the exit, and I remember going through this myself on my hands and knees, because you had to take their exit, which was one of those like walkways and then a big spinning tube around it.
Oh yeah, like a fun house.
Right, yeah. And like it's just a whole nightmare for someone who is in
and
a
at the end
panic.
There's the snake guy who's going,
right, yeah, who's
come
gonna,
again soon.
Yeah, who's gonna like lick me with his split tongue.
Oh yeah. Lick on the cheek if you want to return later in the day.
But yeah, I crawled through that on my hands and knees because I was just like, I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
And then I just remember waiting. We waited like half an hour to 45 minutes for my brother and my dad to stop enjoying themselves through this Ripley's, which they had every right to. It just seemed shitty to me at the time.
But I do want to point out, if you've never been, I'm a big fan of Ripley's.
Oh, yeah,
I have
it's super
the book.
cool. Yeah.
I read it in the bathroom. But like, I do think they're spread thin location wise.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is they will cut, there's many of them. And if you go in one, 8/10 or I guess 4/5 then of the exhibits will be a panel with good illustrations and shit saying, in this other Ripley's museum 1,000 miles away.
Right, on the other side of the country.
There's a snake dude and he is there and he has a split tongue and he does shows. This is information about him. Yeah. It's very like educational.
It is. And they're cool and I recognize that, but man, I'll never go back. And then, so we waited like 45 minutes for my brother and my dad and they just came out laughing, having the best time. And they kept like, I am sitting there like,
did you believe it, son? I did, Pop. I did. Oh, we're closer than we've ever been.
Great memories for them. They had such a father-son bonding experience and they were going through that tube and they had, I was like sitting there like, we need to get out of here. I'm having the worst day of my life. And they just like they thought the tube thing was so fun. And they kept like running back and forth. They're like, let's do it again. Let's do it again. And my mom's just like, what the fuck?
Well, you know what I'd love, Pa, is if I were blind in this tube. That's the only way it could be improved upon.
Yeah, I'm sure that's real fun when you can see.
Yeah.
That was my first like vivid panic attack experience. And then we moved on for years and was like, that wasn't weird.
Yeah.
You know, that happens to Bridgett sometimes.
Okay. All right, so cut the shit.
Okay.
No. What's I do want to ask, because it's one of the recurring themes of this show. You mentioned blindness. Yeah. And this is also my first time talking about panic attacks, which I have in addition to depression. So I will. So we'll compare notes a little bit. But I want to know can you just straight up so people can go like, oh, I'm like that too, or not? Right. That's interesting. What is a panic attack like for you? How long does it last? What symptoms are there? Yeah.
Every time I tell like doctors and therapists how long my panic attacks last, they're like, oh no.
Oh boy.
And they're only like 5 to 7 minutes.
Okay.
Which I am told is long.
Mine are like 1 to 3. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. For it's I know it's gonna happen too when it starts happening. Like for me, and I imagine it's different from everybody, for other people, but for me, for like, and maybe I'm starting the clock early. For the first couple minutes, I'm like, you're about to have a panic attack. You need to calm the fuck down, Bridgett. Like, and just like super hyper aware of my surroundings and like, there's too many people. There's this many people. You need to calm down. Everything's gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be fine. And then does
your brain do the layering thing where you're like, what kind of person has a panic attack? Right. There's no reason to have a panic attack. Does that mean there's something deficient about you? Oh shit.
Exactly. it like just builds up to like, why are you being weird right now, Bridgett? Why are you being so fucking
You gotta cut it the fuck out right now. You gotta cut it the fuck out.
Look at all these people. Look at all these people being fucking normal and they're and you're being weird and like, yeah, just one, and then like the sweat start. I'll just like just start sweating, and then like, you know when you like if you just think about breathing, you're like, oh, how to in out, and then it becomes really weird. It's that I'm just like, okay, breathe, and then I focus too much on like how to breathe and like forget, and then that's when like, okay, you need to sit down because the vision starts getting blurred.
I also am a big believer in, but unable to meditate and be present.
Yeah.
So my brain always inevitably goes like, you got to focus on your breath.
Yeah.
But if you're thinking the phrase focus on your breath, are you truly present? Because your brain's
Right.
processing words.
Right, yeah.
Wait, I stopped breathing. Like, what the fuck is going on? Yeah.
Exactly. It is that. It's just you're like, you need to calm yourself down. You're an intellectual and smart enough person to know the steps you need to take to do that.
Yeah.
But you're thinking way too much about it
Way
to
too
be able
much.
to physically do it. Yeah. So like vision gets blurred and I'll just like, if I'm around people, I'll just be like, I gotta go. And then like,
like Randy Marsh from South Park.
Yeah, exactly.
I gotta go.
Yeah, like, I gotta go to the bathroom now. And just leave and like have to find a place where I can sit like full on just like shoulder people and like try to find a place as my vision gets blurry and blurrier. And then like once I'm like,
are you sure you haven't knocked your glasses off in your confusion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, just contacts fall out. That's mostly what my panic attacks are. Just,
sure.
I can't see. But yeah, so then I mean now I know how to deal with them.
Yeah.
And just like, okay, you need to find a place to they still
I mean that's natural next topic unless there's more symptoms.
No,
Wetting
it's just
the
like
pants, shitting the pants, anything like that.
No, I do not shit myself.
Okay.
Proudly. Am not a shit my pants person, but we'll have to like find dealing with it. It's like it
a
will
dark,
happen.
calm place to calm down.
Yeah, we'll just need to be able to like take a minute, sit down, regain my vision, and just like breathe it out for another like minute or two.
Okay, so you say you deal with it, and that's the next phase of like what I want to get into. What have you tried that did work, didn't work? It sounds like you are able to focus on your breath. I sometimes get to that point, but I always wonder did I succeed in something, or did the panic attack is just that long and it's fading away now?
I mean, when I said deal with it, I think it's just like the actual symptoms of panic attacks can only last for so long.
Eventually,
right? But like it's not
because you're very active and like sports oriented.
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe just because you're in better shape than me, you have a higher capacity for the panic attack to last longer.
Yeah, naturally my heart rate slower. So.
I'm gonna eat some Cheetos after this.
Yeah. No, I think when I said like deal with it, I'm like, well, it's gonna go away whether I do this or not. And this
but what
is
are
just
you thinking? What do you try physically and mentally?
I just need to get away from whatever situation I'm in. Like normally when I have panic attacks, it's around. I'm in some sort of crowd. I'm at like a party or there is a big, like it's happened a lot to me at concerts and at like other venues where there's just a lot of people. That is mostly the times it happens to me. So I do need I'll walk outside of the party and just like walk a block away and like sit down on a curb somewhere.
Okay.
Or just like go to the bathroom and just like sit for a while and just like it's just removing myself from the situation for a little bit.
Whatever the trigger is, but for you, it's crowds.
Yeah.
Is it just like a cost benefit analysis? Because obviously, or I imagine, you've gone to concerts and parties after knowing this.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always happen.
It doesn't always happen.
But you know it's a distinct possibility.
Yes.
What makes it worthwhile?
Well, here's something I've learned specifically with now that I'm older. And one, it's how comfortable am I at this with this crowd of people is a big thing. And then what I will then partake in at the party. Because what I've learned about myself through probably too much trial and error was if I am in a large crowd like a concert or a party and then I smoke weed and I get high.
Double paranoia.
Yeah, that's when like I will spiral. Sorry, I
got a cold and Belize.
Yeah. Cool.
True shit.
Cool.
Wait, am I bragging?
Yeah, you are bragging. Yeah.
No
so I got sick in Belize.
Yeah, I just got sick in Belize. Exotic germs infest my nasal passages even now.
Yeah. Cool, man. Yeah, I drank the water in Mexico once and I have not stopped shitting.
I was just trying to excuse the fact that I'm too lazy to cut out the sound of me coughing. Yeah. So please continue.
I was trying to be professional. But yeah, through too much trial and error, I had learned like if I'm at a party or a concert, like I can't smoke there. Like
Gotcha.
That will all crash in on me real quick.
Festival, no good for you.
No, no. So I can't do that anymore because I know that's like immediate route to panic attack.
Sure.
And they're just like, I know situations to avoid. It will still happen. Like it's in my life. It's not anything that I'm ever going to fully avoid, but I know things to do that will be like, that's a surefire route for bad times for Bridgett.
I should say this more on this show. I'm not a mental health professional, but
right.
So at the risk of giving advice I'm
right.
not licensed to give.
Yeah.
I do feel, and I wonder if you feel,
yeah.
that accepting that it's a part of who you are and realizing that everyone has crosses to bear
right.
does make it easier, because there's both anxiety and anxiety about anxiety.
Yes.
Because there's all kinds of stories, and it's statistically true. They're like, stress will kill you. Oh, now I'm stressed
right.
that I'm going to die early because I'm
yeah.
stressed. Okay, great.
Oh, yeah.
Some of that like tertiary stress I found has faded with me getting better at realizing that, yeah, I'm going to die. Everyone's going to die. And before that, if you're lucky to live a long time, a bunch of your body parts will stop working.
Like sometimes your brain just freaks out on you.
It's okay.
It happens.
But like
to
there's
people.
lots of times I'm lucky enough that most of the time I have the capacity to enjoy what I'm doing. Well, that's worth it. Like I'd re-up subscription to that. So just keep going and like try not to stress about your stress. There's already enough stress.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, when it gets to the point of a panic attack, you're not going to stop that. I figure.
I feel like it's a physical event where your stress becomes like
yeah,
in control of your faculties. Yeah.
That is, I mean, panic attacks are the most extreme symptom of anxiety. They're not like the end all be all. I think everybody, even if you don't have an anxiety issue, could get them.
That's a great point, because they overlap a lot, but not always. So we shouldn't assume that.
Yeah, it's like it's the same thing with, you can go through a period where you're depressed and not have depression.
Right. Especially if there's like a trigger you understand and it makes sense and then it fades away. You probably don't have clinical major recurring depression.
Right. But yeah, it's a thing that can happen to people.
Course.
Yeah. And that's panic attacks.
Jen is mildly depressed because the trip was so good. Yeah. And her job right now sucks balls, but she can't quit because she has X number of hours to fill to get her licensure for her goals in life.
Yeah.
So it's like, I got depressed in the last week of summer vacation. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's
doesn't mean you got to hop on the Prozac train.
Right. Exactly. There's things that happen to me. So when I talk about panic attack, they happen to me because of that, but that's not like what my day to day with anxiety is.
Do you feel that you have a lot of ambient anxiety, or are you saying no, actually?
I do.
Okay. Yeah. It overlaps a lot. Yeah. We're not saying it doesn't.
No, it overlaps quite a bit. That's just like that's the most problematic part, and the part where I'm like, I probably need medicine for that. I need to take something or talk to someone or do something about this because it was happening so frequently.
Yes.
At like my worst parts of anxiety.
How frequently is the period you're talking about?
The period I was talking about, I was probably having some, if not a major panic attack, some sort of like minor
near
panic.
Miss, where like near crest, but it doesn't climax.
Exactly. Exactly. Probably like once or twice a week.
Ooh, that's pretty frequent. Yeah.
Yeah. And that was the period in college where I was like, okay, I need to do something about this because I can't.
Are you far enough from it, or do you feel like, or is it unknowable? I don't know. Yeah. Have you settled on your own theory of why that period was so difficult? College is crowded.
Right.
But is it also the, first time being an adult out in the world, that stuff, or what?
Yeah, I can put my finger on it pretty well because it is similar to, has a lot to do with what you said. I was, I came back from my junior. I need to explain my college a little bit. I went to a school called Drexel in Philadelphia, which is great. And what they did is we went on a co-op program, which is essentially instead of going to class, you just get a job for 6 months.
Oh, okay.
And then before that,
now called Sea Org.
Exactly, Sea Org. I signed a 1 million-year contract. And I captained a ship.
You got off easy. I think it's a 1 trillion-year contract.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Beyond your death and the death of the sun.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's like to the existence of the universe. But yeah, so I went to sea I did co-op for 6 months.
Go
Before
Eagles.
that, go Birds. Before that, I was on a summer program, which also took me out to LA. So I was in LA working and like living here in the middle of college for 9 months.
Oh,
and that's
Yeah.
for a long time. And it was great. It was it was actually a really good period in my life because I met a lot of people. It's actually a roundabout way of how I got into Cracked.
Sure. But working your way through college must be just tiring and stressful.
It was but I didn't have to take classes, so I felt
it was a break in between.
It was there are no classes. I was just like a person in LA.
It's like a blacksmith's apprenticeship.
Exactly. They were like, well, you're in art school anyway, so just drop out for 9 months and see what happens.
It doesn't sound as stressful.
No, it was actually really cool. And like it was cool because there was a group of people here. There were like 5 of us doing this for 9 months, and like we were like alone in LA together, and it was like fun. And like I like had this solid group of people in my life that was a constant, and I was doing well at these internships. Like I knew I was well liked, and again, roundabout way of how I got to Cracked, and I started like learning how to produce and like really feeling like I was an adult and got the hang of life out here.
Totally.
Then I went back to Philadelphia in the winter. And I was in LA for, summer through spring. The best time. And it was great. And then I went to Philadelphia in the winter, and I saw, and this was in the middle of my junior year of college, and I saw the people I was interning with getting positions that I knew I would have gotten that were full-time in companies.
You were behiing for taking the
exactly.
time.
And I was watching like these people get better, and I was like, everyone that respected me and that I met is gonna forget about me, and I'm gonna have to start at which didn't end up.
Maybe I'm deluding myself, but I feel like, and by the way, good training for the industry that you're now in.
Exactly. Yeah.
They still respect you. They still love you. It doesn't mean they can do anything for you.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. But yeah, it's just like watching things happen, and had like the normal, school stressors. But then I was like, I made a huge mistake. I fucked up. I should have just stayed. I should have dropped out, which is not true because it ended.
The Some News Patreon's doing so good.
It's so good. Yeah.
And that means we're bad people. You realize
that?
Oh,
right? Yeah. And then that was definitely added on to that.
No, we're happy for them. But like also that means we've failed.
Right. Well, that was also another part of it because I am also like I feel like anyone with anxiety or issues like that is just like self-aware to a fault where they're like, I'm doing this, I'm aware I'm doing this, and that makes me a bad person, and that makes everything worse because
not always morally bad, but like faulty. Like I should be stronger.
I should be strong. I should be a better just like all around a better person,
or whatever you subscribe to, like more faithful or more present or whatever.
Yeah, just like have a stronger moral code and like whatever. So that was adding, and then it was like all the college bullshit that everyone goes through, and then just the stress because I was getting farther in college, and I was like, well, I'm gonna have to move back out to LA. When am I just gonna like go out there and be like, hey, I've been gone for almost a year and it's been another year, but remember me? I'm gonna have to start at square one. And it was like a lot of that cycling, and then film school towards the end gets very competitive to some like whose project is the best and like who's doing the most. And,
heard it's expensive and not that great.
I mean, I'll never regret it because again, my experiences being able to go on co-op and then led to me having a job.
Totally. Nor do Abe and Adam both went to USC film school, but I feel like it's the.
Well, I went to undergrad and they're just stupid. So
sure, it's the same as college where you're like. Especially in the age of the internet, if you're actually genuinely curious about learning, or even if it's boring, you want to learn a skill because you want that job, you can do it yourself.
I know, and that was
so college is just a place where it's like Tinder, but non-sexual. It's just a place to meet the people who happen to like and have the same ambitions you do and form connections. And they're like, I'll never regret film school because I got to see like Ryan Coogler, one of many people, like blossom and learn from him and get to know him and people in his universe. And who knows if that could help me out or even it was just cool to learn from them. But no, the teachers just showed us movies and we talked about them.
Yeah. I mean, and also for me, it gave me a safe place to like fail kind of.
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Like, I wrote a bunch of stuff that was shitty. And at the time for a freshman in college, people were like, this is great. And it was encouraging. And now, like, 2 years later, even while I was in college, I looked back and I was like, no, that wasn't good. But I was encouraged to do more and then get better. And, like, I didn't have to embarrass myself.
But that shows you how much better you've gotten.
Right, exactly.
I'm gratified when I look at something from 10 years ago.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
like, oh, God, that's
exactly.
garbage.
Well, yeah, when I look at it as garbage and I was like, oh, but people were smart enough to tell me, like, hey, for you, that's for, you know, as 18-year-old kid that wrote this, that was great. And then I can go, it just, like
but it's
I said,
cool that your writer's eye develops to the point where you're like, even on your own stuff, that's wrong, I could do this better. Oh, wow, I'm much better than I was.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, for me, it just gave me a safe place to like try things and fail and like learn stuff. So I'll never regret that. And then, I was able to, ultimately all my panic was moved because I was able to get a job right out of college, which I was very lucky. But that whole period leading up to that was just like me freaking out.
Well, we're all laid off, as I think is public knowledge.
Yes, yeah.
I'm very blessed and grateful to have small beans going to pay the rent. While I'm not going to hide from the audience.
Right.
Still look for other bigger jobs like
of course.
film deals and shit, but small beans
you have to. That's
I love doing it and it pays the bills and I'm very lucky for that. So at the risk of causing tension between us. Yeah. Has the panic increased since you haven't had a job, or what's your situation right now?
There was, when the layoff happened, there was, it was a real dark period. And it was, I think, not the first time, but one of the few times my anxiety has interacted with depression. I wouldn't say I have depression, but, you know, I've had experiences with it. And that was certainly one of the times where that happened. And it came back worse than at the worst point in college at that time.
Okay.
Because I was just like, there was a lot of imposter syndrome going on where I was like, someone I knew gave me this kid at a college job and I just, you know, I was like,
but I'm not really going to make it.
Right. Yeah. I was like, I had 2.5 years of incredible luck and now that's run out. And now I'm actually square one and I'm going to have to start, you know, PAing again and start from the bottom and like completely backtrack my life.
If it's any consolation, that feeling can persist for 10 years.
Yeah.
Because I was a crack for 9. I've been like roughly in Hollywood for 11 now.
Right.
And I feel like I have forged this bond with the audience that translates into enough money to pay rent. And that's amazing. Yeah. But I in no way think that I'm like in or have the respect of the real industry or anything. Like, Jack O'Brien saw that I was funny and he's a cool guy and he hired me straight out of college, but he's just a guy who thought I was funny. Right. I have no faith that I'll ever again be hired to do anything quote unquote real in any way. Yeah. Yeah. No, that was definitely the situation for a while. And then I started getting freelance jobs as a producer. Well, actually, thank you. Golf clap. Thank you. I started it was with one company. Sure. But I was like, okay, at least when I'm working and I have steady work, I can push that aside. But what do we want to not have anxiety? Do you want like everyone in the industry to come and be like, we approve of you? Oh my God. No, that would give me more anxiety. Oh, okay. You'd be like, this is a crowd right now. I don't want you all. Why are you all in my house? Harvey's getting a little close. Right. Everyone get out of my apartment. It's too small. No, I think I was, when I got laid off, I am one of the younger people in the cracked community. So it's like, I was a 24-year-old kid and I was like, who is going to hire a fucking 24-year-old as a producer? Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. Because I have the opposite where I'm like, you're already 33. You should give up. Or like, you don't have a movie under your belt by now that's in theaters. You're 33, dude. Do you realize how old that is in Hollywood? It's over, man. Yeah, my imposter syndrome works the other way. I'm like, you fluked your way into a producer, writer, whatever position at Cracked, some nebulous position at Cracked, whatever I was doing. That felt important to me. I felt like I made things happen there. Everyone thinks you're 17 and they don't give a shit. Exactly. Well, I remember the first time when I first started at Cracked, we had like a happy hour and Cody was like,
she allowed to drink? Or are we being cool right now and letting this kid drink? And I was like, no, I'm 20. I was 22 at the time.
You're like, I'm also allowed to be funny.
Yeah.
And part of the creative team.
Right. Yeah. It took me a while to get the legs to do that. But
it took all of us a while.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know if you've talked in like a vulnerable place or in depth with Cody, but, and longtime fans of the site know this. Dan and I got like easy ins because we were the first faces you saw on video, and people were like, oh, I like Cracked, I like these guys. Everyone fucking hates change. Yeah. So we were lucky that we were the standard. Cody was the first person to come in
and was like,
who people hadn't seen before. 2.5 to 3 years of 90% people going like, who the fuck are you? Kill yourself. Why are you here?
Oh yeah.
And we're like, we thought we were allowed to add new people. You want only 2 people? Like, people what the fuck is that?
We're the worst. No, I remember that. And I when I got there, it was Alex Schmitty was the new guy.
And he endured it. It did shorten. Like he endured it for like 8 months.
Right.
Cody had for like a solid 2 years. At least. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. With whenever I started getting on camera, people were nicer to me to some extent. I mean,
maybe you're better than everyone.
No, I think people recognized that I was like young and probably very vulnerable.
Okay, that's imposter syndrome. Strangers online don't give a shit about your feelings. And I say that as a compliment because that means the good response was because you're good.
The good ones, and then the other ones were like horribly sexist and anti-Semitic. So that was like half of it. But none of it was like, new kid get off. It was all like either like, hey, I like this new girl, or like stuff I don't want to have to repeat.
If you don't want that shit, grow a dick or change society completely. Is that difficult? I don't know what your problem is.
I don't know. But I expected that. By the time that happened, I was like, okay, that's going to happen.
But don't put up with that shit. Small Bean's official stance is fuck assholes on the internet.
But so when Cracked App, like, to get back on topic, when Cracked dispersed, that was a hard period, because also I was like, I have been working for 2.5 years. I don't have any money saved. Like, this is going to be a big problem. And that was, there was money panic, there was imposter syndrome, and like, will I ever get a job again? Panic. Then I started getting hired for jobs, and it definitely got better from there. And now I'm career-wise, I really wanted to jump at it, and I mean this in a way that we all probably feel about digital content. You want to make longer stuff for not YouTube.
We all recognize that eventually everything will just be screen. You want to watch screen?
Exactly.
So like, it's not that internet's cheaper or like Netflix is making all the best shit.
Right.
But we don't want to.
Right.
We can show off in 3 to 5 minutes.
Right.
But
it's not the story. Yeah, it's not.
We want to write a 90-minute to a series.
It's not why you're putting yourself through all this bullshit.
Right. Everyone dreamed of creating characters that can breathe for hours and hours.
Right, and that like people can attach you. And like certainly there was some of that at Cracked for you guys, but
for you guys,
and like I didn't. I'm not. That I don't want to do that. Like
Crack Studios was delightful.
Crack Studios was delightful. Yeah, I loved working on those and stuff because those were the characters. But yeah, like sketch. I love it. I do genuinely love it, but like that's not why. Again, I'm putting myself through all of this, and that's also like I was making sketches again, and I was like, well, you made a lateral move, so good fucking job, Bridgett. And there is some of that still.
We can't afford to rent cameras, so we're a podcasting network.
No, I mean,
what are we supposed to think?
No, I mean, fuck you guys.
No. You're great.
No,
but money is money, and straight up,
and it's hard.
People underestimate. That's why our new series is all shot on webcam.
Yeah.
To make like Welcome Back Potter, if you count the people's salaries who also worked on it, it's like $150,000.
Yeah. No, I did the budgets for Crack Studios. I intimately know.
The $8,000 a month we're getting is so amazing and makes it so I have a roof over my head.
Yeah.
It doesn't pay for Cracked level sketches and shit.
Oh, absolutely not. I can tell you that off the top of my head because I was doing those budgets. It does not. And I am intimately making movies is hard, and it feels stupid complaining about it because it's also kind of dumb, but it's what I love doing.
I saw Ready Player One on the plane back from Belize, and I was like, could you imagine if you saw like the whole evolutionary timeline of the Earth that the species would evolve and they develop all this technology and money that's truly miraculous.
Yeah.
We just stack silicon atoms together and we're like, it creates an image on a screen connected to software and hardware that's insane.
It's insane.
Communicates with satellites. We were literally monkey people stacking rocks and then like, what if we did this? What if we did that? 2,000 years later, we have a fucking computer. But we use it to make Ready Player One? What the fuck is wrong with us?
To speak about stupid panic attacks.
That blossomed in my brain on the plane, yeah.
No, but to speak to like stupid, like panicky, anxiety-inducing moments I had, I remember seeing one of the third Hunger Games.
Sure.
And I was in theaters, and this was, again, I am a young person, and I was in college during this time. And
I took my binky out my mouth, and I was like, wow.
Yeah, exactly. I just, every time, because also it was like kind of a running joke in the office at Crack that like I kid, because we would make references to movies, and I brought it on myself, and I would just whisper, like we'd be talking about Jurassic Park, and I'd just be like, I was born that year.
The last 3 years, I was a secret alcoholic who never came into the office. So you might be surprised to know, not up on the in-jokes.
No, yeah, that's why I explained. Yeah, it's like,
I never knew that or participated in that.
Right, yeah, it was like a...
I would swear you're not a day under 41, but that's just me. I don't know.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much for that. So I was watching Hunger Games, and the opening of that movie is just like insane, and it was like, this is a bad movie, and they spent so much money. What would I do with that money? How would I make that movie? And like just trying to wrap my head around how much just like the first 30 seconds of Hunger Games cost was like, fuck everything.
And how much $200 million actually represents in human effort that produced the resources of society that allow us to have $200 extra million to fuck around.
Yeah.
Like that goes all the way back to people like hoeing fields and planting shit. Like that's where that luxury came from.
I know.
And you make whatever the fuck. Yeah.
It makes
fuck
me
you.
It makes me so angry when I see bad high budget movies.
Oh my God. Low budget's fine. I'm like, fine. Your parents paid for this. That's fine.
It's totally fine. But like make something that at least like even if it's not good, just says something about you or like your worldview or something you feel is important.
Yeah.
And that's why I every time I think about that and have like anxiety about like what am I could
have
be
you
a
had
doctor.
a panic attack about the low quality of art in your life?
No, but it's something it's something I think about a lot.
Causes anxiety, but not a full blown.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's more in that like what the fuck am I doing with my life? Like,
but I don't think you need to be like a writer, producer, performer to watch a movie and be like, what the fuck are we doing?
Yeah,
there's movies
it's
out
more
there.
Yeah. It's more of a catalyst to me spiraling than it is actually about that. But you just gotta think like, well, it started because people have always needed to tell stories, and we
Marvel movies are the same as the Roman gods. I get that.
Right. Yeah. Like people just have wanted to tell stories to each other, and that's a basic human need. And then we just got technology that made it better. And us better at doing that, we could use that resource to do other things, but
I do feel that the technology's gotten to a point where, and hopefully this will pass because like our shock with how good shit looks will pass.
Yeah.
There's like a whole slew of movies that I consider leaning so hard on it looks so good you don't notice that you've seen it a million times.
Yeah.
The Revenant's the most beautiful movie I've ever seen about a guy who gets vengeance by killing dudes who killed someone he loves. Like what?
Yeah.
We watched Mandy last night. I was so excited from the trailer, and it looks gorgeous, just like Drive did. And both of them are amazingly beautiful movies about a dude who sees someone he loves gets killed and kills everyone who was involved.
Oh, every story.
What the fuck is like? Is that all we have to say about life?
I remember in film school when one of our writing teachers was like, there are 3 kinds of stories, and told us 3 kinds, and I was like, that can't be it. There's got to be something else.
Or let's keep trying.
Right. I was like, like people, there's the thing that everyone always says of like, there's no original ideas anymore. And that will drive me crazy in my brain, just like digging for something. Like we just got to try harder.
Especially because in human history, we have the fastest rate of change of any species or culture. there's new shit that will come into existence you couldn't have imagined existed.
Right.
Don't you think that will pose new ideas? Like, do you think, okay, well, Jane Eyre basically wrote the book on everything. We don't have to discuss whether artificial life has a soul or should be given legal rights. Yeah, we do, because that wasn't an issue anyone thought of before. Yeah.
But that's why they're right. And I feel like, you have your thing with Vonnegut, and I love him too.
He says there's 7.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there are people like him and filmmakers who are certainly doing that now that are like digging at ideas that we have not talked about. And that's what makes a movie better to me. And it's going to make me, I've been yelled at so much about Marvel. And this is gonna make the Small Beans audience mad. But what drives me crazy about Marvel movies and that whole scheme, I think the most impressive thing about that will always be the marketing scheme behind it. More so than the movie. It is a 2-hour commercial.
Oh, yeah, because you see DC and Universal trying to copy it with the Dark Universe, and you're like, it's just a marketing thing, and you're not doing it right. They nailed it.
Yeah, every time I look around the theater, I'm like, this is just a marketing scheme that we're all falling for. You're all wearing shirts and costumes. How much did you spend on that? Like, we all fell for a marketing scheme. This movie says they could have been made, barring technology, at those stories could have been made at any time, and they would have been.
Barring technology is everything. That's my point about why they have nothing to say. Yeah, but
it looks.
You're
cool.
like,
well, yeah.
It objectively looks like everyone did a good job who's involved in how good it fucking looks.
Well, what drives me crazy is I'm like, okay, when people look back at the pop culture of this generation, those are going to be the standouts. They're like, this generation was the Marvel superhero.
That's what I was like, how amazing would Drive have been if it was about anything at all?
Yeah, exactly. And it drives me because it's like those stories say nothing about where we are as a society or people, really. They're truisms that have existed throughout time.
And the history of film. It feels like so many movies now are saying, do you remember how in the course of film history there's been at least 50 movies like this? Right. Here's the best looking one ever. Fine, but it's still the same as a thing I've seen 50 times.
Right, and it just drives me crazy that that's going to define our generation.
We're the reference generation.
Yeah, of pop culture. And I'm like, well, we got to be more than that, because that says nothing about this time period that is extremely fraught and nuanced. And no one
like, we think 80s fashion looks corny, but at least an image comes to mind of anything.
Yeah, ours is just a mash of everything that came before.
Years, they'll be like, remember the 2000s when they were remembering the 90s, 80s, and 70s?
Well, if you look back at the early 2000s, some of my favorite Instagram accounts are like fashion of the early 2000s, and it's just a train wreck of people wearing ties as belts.
Okay.
And
I never stopped doing that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And belts as ties, but that's for autoerotic pleasure.
Yeah.
All right, we're closing in on an hour, so I want to ask a few more on-topic questions.
Yeah, I feel like we've gotten away.
Oh, we could do a part 2 easily. Yeah. But I do want to ask, because I know I deem it so. Yeah. A big part of this show is the normalization of these aspects, and I hope people out there feel heard or connected to. In my experience with panic attacks, which involve hyperventilating and hitting myself in the head compulsively. Yeah. Those are my main symptoms. The medicine has really helped.
Yes.
I was on Ativan as a child after the car accident where I had brain damage, which fans of the show will have heard about several times or referenced. Yeah. Which is where my panic attacks and depression really started. Yeah. I think I'm genetically prone to depression, have issues in life that can trigger depression, and had a brain injury that actually triggered it. But it's that thing where it's like, you probably would have become depressed at some point, but moved up the timetable. I was on Ativan for a long time, and that helped in a really acute way. Yeah. And then while you're freshly recovering alcoholic, Ativan is no good. It's like it's not recommended. Yeah. It can trigger cravings. So currently I've been on Prozac for a long time, but that's just targets depression. Yeah. And I'm trying various things, and it's a tough journey. Like I tried Cymbalta. I won't go into every detail, even though some are hilarious, but like the side effects are too much to deal with. Right. I tried.
The side effects for those things are.
Wellbutrin, the side effects are too much to deal with, including like vivid, hours-long, lucid nightmares of people scraping the flesh from my face and shit. And I'm like, why is that happening? Yeah.
Oh, I've had some weird.
So now I'm trying Zoloft, and I can't endorse or deny, but also everyone reacts differently to these things. So mood medication can often be a crapshoot and a journey.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to ease off that, and I'm not saying this is right for you either, listener, but ease more onto meditation practice and stuff like that. Who knows if that'll work? What's been your experience, and what do you think right now?
It is it's scary saying this because again, it's different for everyone and different things, and I really don't like when people are like, no, you don't need medication, because some people do, and it has helped me a lot. I need to actually switch because I take Lexapro, and at some point that causes a plateau effect in your brain, as most of these medications do.
Oh, I see.
Like it releases, serotonin, dopamine, and all that stuff that your brain, when you have these problems, doesn't naturally do. And then at some point your brain gets used to that amount, and then you slide back, which is something I've been dealing with currently.
Okay. Crushing it and snorting it, I think, is the next logical step. Yeah.
I have thought about it.
And that is an official endorsement and recommendation from me,
that
Michael
is scientifically
Swain.
proven. So I have been scared to try that because I was like, Lexapro was the first thing given to me when I first started taking medication in college, and it worked great. Had some weird side effects. Like I could not stop yawning.
Oh, interesting.
It was really strange, and I looked that up, and it wasn't even a tired thing, but just every 30 seconds I would yawn.
And other people are like, yeah, that happens.
Yeah. And I was a college senior too, and then so I would go to a party and drink and then be like, I gotta go throw that up right now.
Oh, interesting.
But that only lasts a while. Now I'm great. I'm in the process of having to wean off of that to try to start something new. And
good luck to you.
Yeah, weaning off is also because I don't for me with Lexapro, if I just forgot to take the medication for a couple days, or when I switched insurers and had a weird gap in there was a week or two where I just needed the pharmacy to catch up. It was the weirdest week of my life.
Right.
The withdrawal effects are it feels like your body has jumped 3 feet ahead of you and your brain needs to catch up when you're walking.
I've also never had any mood medication that doesn't have some side effects.
Yeah.
Some are very mild and okay, but and everyone affects everyone differently. We can't underline that enough.
Yeah.
So yeah, if you're just if you really need it, please get the help and strength to you, because you might have to go through 4 and the first 3 might give you sweat neck and stink foot. You don't know what it's going to cause.
Weird. Yeah. Well, yeah.
My mom took Cymbalta and started getting the feeling of electrical shocks in her brain.
It's cool because
she looked it up, and a lot of people were like, "Oh yeah."
Yeah, when you look at the symptoms. Yeah. When I looked up, why am I yawning and throwing up foam? Yeah. Just I was what is this in my body?
You'll get some foam. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But yeah, it helped take the edge off, and then honestly, for me, medication helps subside some of the biggest, most aggressive symptoms, but the ever-present feeling of anxiety of just a little person in my body just running back and forth of what's happening, what are you doing, what's going on.
Eddie Murphy as Dave.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That movie that we all remember fondly.
Everyone loves that.
Yeah. Yeah, that did not go away until, I try to meditate, and then having that feeling of just, finding the tiny things that work for you, whether it's therapy, which I only recently started going to.
It's so,
which is great.
I have faith that meditation does work.
Yeah.
If I'm ever able to actually do it.
Oh, it's so hard. Yeah. It's so hard. Yeah. And then, the medication helps, take the big things away. And then again, it's just the little things that work for you. If I'm feeling extremely stressed, really think about the target of it, list out what I need to do to get through that stage, and just the little routines that you can make for yourself to get yourself to try to calm yourself down.
But it's kind of trial and error to figure out what they are.
It is.
Yeah.
And for me,
so don't give up.
Yeah, you need to like figure it out. I have like 8 instruments in my room that
figure
I can
out what your self-soothing thing is.
Yeah, I have 8 instruments in my room that I can half play because of anxiety and like.
I bet that helps.
Yeah.
I have bongos now for that.
Yeah. It's doing something tactile. Like it is a big part of the reason why I'm active.
I learned to rap to combat anxiety.
Yeah. So like I have journals where it's just stream of consciousness, like write out.
Because that was easier than,
Right. It's just like whatever my hand is doing is writing is fine.
Yeah.
That I'll throw away after. And it's another part of the reason why like I'm active a lot.
And that became the script for all of After Hours.
That is all After Hours. That's how most screenplays I feel like
her eyes rolled back in her head and she just wrote. We've never revealed this before, but it was all Bridgett.
That was my process. But yeah, no, that's like, I think also part of my anxiety, I think, stemmed from routines. And when I was an athlete in high school, I had a very berating coach who stressed me out a lot. But through that I started like going to gyms and stuff when I was 14 because of that. And that is a thing that is now in my head of like, well, you have to do that to be better.
It's okay to be ambitious, I hope.
Yeah. Yes.
But yeah, you start associating with, is the only, like, especially if you're someone who is succeeding on the whole, you're like, is it because I berate myself so much? I can't let go to that. Maybe that's my secret weapon.
Right.
Maybe I need the coach in my head telling me I'm a piece of shit. And if I let myself be okay, this will all fall apart.
Right. Yeah, I needed to, it took me a long time. And it's something I still struggle with is like negative reinforcement not being a driving force of why I'm doing stuff. Because no one outside in my life anymore, besides since that coach has gone away, has sat over me and told me I'm a piece of shit.
Yeah.
That fucks up everything.
So why should I try?
Right. Now it's just me who does that.
Yeah.
But when I'm able to do something active, that goes away a little bit because it is like, I'm doing something to better myself and make myself better. So that has always helped me. And like, I
should try that. I should try bettering myself for the first time.
Yeah, no, it's so hard. It sucks. But yeah, so that has helped. And then also, but there is the backslide of like, but when I don't do that, if I like can't go to the gym for 2 days because life gets busy and I have to do laundry or something and like cook a meal, then I'm like, oh no, I'm a piece of shit. I haven't worked out in 2 days.
It is a struggle.
Yeah.
It's always going to be a struggle, but over time you learn things and you do get a handle on it.
Right. They're the big obvious things that can help you. And they do help, like medication, like therapy, that if you need it. Therapy, probably everybody. Medication.
It's a luxury, like it's a privilege to have if you can afford it. It's
exactly.
Great.
It's great. If you can do it.
It's like going to the spa.
Yeah, if you can do it. Yeah, talk about yourself with someone for an hour.
But there's some shitty therapists, which I always have to say when that comes up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like I also treat it like you can go to a spa and someone can give you a crappy massage. You can go to a mechanic and they're not good. Doctors often you have to try a couple therapists.
Yeah, that was the thing because
to be a good fit.
I just started going to therapy and I was like, I don't know if this person's good or not. Like it took me a while to figure out.
I'm not saying they aren't, but like be aware that there are therapists with many different styles and it's almost like a date. Like if you're not a match, you can just say, I don't think this is working for me and try a different one.
I wish there was speed dating for therapists. Like you just.
I would love like a 10-minute sample of 5 therapists and then you pick one and go ahead.
Just go in a hotel, ballroom somewhere.
So convenient.
And just, it would be great.
Not all in one room though, that could trigger your panic.
Just a bunch of people asking me how am I.
I got to ask, have you ever attended San Diego Comic-Con?
No, I didn't.
You would love it.
Would I?
Just kidding. No. It's the most intense crowd I've ever existed.
Yeah, it's an intense crowd all celebrating the marketing scheme.
And I've been to Coachella. Comic-Con is worse, much
than
worse.
Coachella. Yeah. I can. I don't think you could pay me to go to Comic-Con.
I have many more questions, but we're well over our time now. So maybe we'll do a part 2. Who knows? But thank you so much for being here.
Of course.
Please plug Rough Stuff again because I benefit directly from that. And let people know where they can find you and what you're up to.
Yeah, I mean, if you're on this channel, check out the other awesome podcasts, one of which is Rough Stuff that I host with my friend Sarah Griffith. We invite comedians on, and they tell us embarrassing stories, and it's not undifferent from this. It's
even like we kept it light.
We did keep it light.
I always just embrace whatever natural energy comes, and we happen to be funny today. Good for us.
Cool.
But like, I would say rough stuff's even
light. Yeah.
No one asks you like Tom, you shit your pants on the street. What medication did you take to deal with that trauma? It's just hardcore. You want embarrassing shit? Here you go.
Well, like some of the guests, like I know personally, and then I'm like, all right, you got to get around this one. Like,
and you hear things you're like, I've known you so long, I never knew
that.
I
never knew that. Yeah. But yeah, that's just fun childhood embarrassing stories that we all hold on to and have.
It's maybe the most entertaining show we have. So it's just pure.
Thank you.
Pure comedy. I love it.
Yeah, I also think that's me holding on to all those stories is part of anxiety, that I can intimately know every embarrassing thing that's ever happened to me.
I did think you and Sarah would run out quickly, but you always seem to have a new one I've never heard for the beginning where you have to reel one off.
Yeah, I mean, we've been digging. Certainly,
like,
but
do you suck? Are you a doofus or something that I'm not aware of?
I don't think anything is that out of the ordinary. I just think I hold on to them because of anxiety that I intimately
everything
remember.
You said I probably did and forgot.
Yeah. I don't think anything's like that, specific to me that I say. Right. It's just that I've held on to every single one because I think about them, all the ways I fucked up constantly.
And that's why you're the perfect host for that show and on Suicide Watch.
Yeah. No, but Rough Stuff is a lot of fun. I appreciate this network for hosting it, and this was great. And you can find me on Twitter at Bridgett Tweets, and also Rough Stuff Podcast at Rough Stuff Pod on the social medias. You know them.
That's all the followables.
Yeah.
Bye.
Yeah.